The conference hall of the Galactic Council station stretched out like a massive amphitheater carved from crystal and steel. Hundreds of alien species filled the curved rows of seats, their various forms creating a tapestry of colors and shapes that would have amazed any human seeing it for the first time. But Marcus Chen had seen it many times before. 20 years of diplomatic service had made even this wonder feel routine. Marcus walked down the central aisle toward the human delegation section, his worn briefcase in one hand. Beside him, tail wagging gently, walked Atlas. The golden retriever moved with calm dignity, his therapy dog vest clearly visible against his honey-colored fur. Atlas had been with Marcus for 5 years now, ever since the ambassador had started experiencing severe anxiety from the constant pressure of representing Earth among the stars. The dog had become something of an unofficial mascot for the human delegation. Other species found Atlas fascinating. The Quillari, with their telepathic abilities, claimed they could sense waves of pure contentment radiating from the animal. The insectoid Zethrin had written several academic papers trying to understand the bond between humans and their companion animals. Even the stern warrior race called the Krovax had seemed curious at first, though they kept their distance. Today's session was about mining rights in the outer territories. It was a standard negotiation, the kind Marcus had handled dozens of times. Earth wanted access to a mineral-rich asteroid field that could provide rare elements needed for advanced manufacturing. Several other species had competing claims. It should have been simple. Marcus took his seat in the human section. Atlas settled down beside his chair, resting his head on his paws. The dog's brown eyes scanned the room with mild interest before closing halfway in contentment. A few nearby delegates from other species nodded greetings to Marcus. Some even smiled at Atlas in their own ways. The session began with the usual formalities. The council speaker, a floating jellyfish-like being called a luminar, opened the floor for discussion. Marcus presented Earth's case clearly and carefully. Humanity needed these resources. They were willing to share the territory with other interested parties. They proposed a joint mining operation that would benefit everyone involved. Then came the Krovax representative. Warlord Krasthor stood over 7 feet tall, his armor-plated exoskeleton gleaming under the station's lights. The Krovax were a species that had conquered their way to prominence in the galaxy. They respected strength above all else, and they viewed humanity as weak newcomers who had only joined the Council 20 years ago. In galactic terms, humans were babies. The humans want what they have not earned. Krasthor's voice boomed through the translation system. They have contributed nothing to the Council. They have no great victories to their name. They possess no advanced technologies that benefit others. Why should they receive anything? Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice level. With respect, Warlord, humanity has contributed significantly to Council projects. Our medical research has helped cure diseases affecting 3 different species. Our engineering teams have improved station life support systems. Our cultural exchanges have been... Culture. Krasthor spat the word like an insult. You bring stories and songs while others bring strength and wisdom earned over millennia. The outer territories should go to species who have proven themselves worthy. Other council members shifted uncomfortably. Some agreed with Krasthor. Others found his approach too aggressive. But no one spoke up for humanity. This was how it usually went. Earth was still the newcomer, still trying to earn respect among civilizations that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Marcus took a slow breath. Atlas, sensing his human stress, lifted his head. The dog stood up, stretched, and then did something he had done 100 times before. He walked out into the open space between the delegate sections, approaching the center of the chamber where representatives sometimes stood to address the council. This was normal behavior for Atlas. The dog was trained to sense anxiety and provide comfort. He had visited dozens of different aliens during sessions, offering a friendly presence that seemed to ease tensions. Many species had grown to appreciate these visits. Even the insectoid Zethrin enjoyed the feeling of Atlas's soft fur, so different from their own chitin shells. Atlas walked toward Krasthor's section, tail wagging slowly. The dog had approached the Krovax before without incident. Marcus watched but wasn't concerned. This was what Atlas did, but something was different today. Krasthor looked down at the approaching dog. His multiple eyes narrowed. Perhaps the argument had put him in a foul mood. Perhaps he saw the dog's approach as some kind of insult. Perhaps he simply wanted to make a point about human weakness. "Keep your primitive beast away from me," Krasthor growled. Atlas stopped, sensing the hostility. His tail lowered slightly, but he didn't retreat. He was a therapy dog, trained to approach carefully and offer comfort even to those who seemed angry or upset. Marcus stood up. "Atlas, come here, boy." The dog's ears perked up at his human's voice. He turned to head back. That's when it happened. Krasthor's arm moved in a blur. A plasma weapon appeared in his clawed hand, standard issue for Krovax warriors. The bright blue bolt struck Atlas in the side. The dog didn't even have time to yelp. He simply collapsed, his body hitting the floor with a soft thud that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. For a moment, nobody moved. The entire council chamber seemed frozen in shock. Marcus's briefcase hit the floor as he rushed forward. He dropped to his knees beside Atlas, his hands hovering over the dog's still body. There was no blood. Plasma weapons cauterized as they killed. Atlas's eyes were open but seeing nothing. His tongue lolled slightly from his mouth. "Atlas," Marcus whispered. His hands finally touched the dog's fur, still warm. "Atlas, no. Please, no." Krasthor holstered his weapon. It was coming toward me in an aggressive manner. I defended myself from a potential threat. The words seemed to come from very far away. Marcus couldn't look up, couldn't look away from Atlas's face. The dog who had helped him through panic attacks and sleepless nights. The dog who had been his companion through the loneliness of space. The dog who had never hurt anyone in his entire life. Other humans from the delegation rushed forward. Someone put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Someone else was shouting at Krasthor. The council chamber erupted into chaos as different species began arguing about what had just happened. The Luminar speaker tried to restore order. "This is clearly a tragic accident." The Krovax representative mistook the animal's approach as threatening. "We must—" "Accident?" Marcus finally looked up. His face was dry. No tears yet, just a blank expression that made several nearby aliens step back. "He murdered my dog because he was annoyed with me. Because he wanted to prove humans are beneath him." "The Krovax will offer formal apologies," the speaker said quickly. "There will be an inquiry. Proper protocols will be followed." Krasthor crossed his arms. "I will state my actions were justified self-defense. Your animal should have been controlled. This matter is closed." Marcus stood slowly. 2 other human delegates had to support him. He looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Some looked sympathetic. Many looked uncomfortable. A few looked like they agreed with Krasthor. But none of them looked like they would demand real justice. "We're leaving," Marcus said quietly. The human delegation gathered their materials. Someone found a case to carry Atlas's body. They would take him home. They would give him a proper burial. They would grieve. As Marcus walked out of the chamber, he looked back once. Krasthor had already returned to his seat, discussing the mining rights with another delegate as if nothing had happened. To him, it truly was nothing. Just a primitive beast that got too close. The doors closed behind the humans. The council session continued. The matter was officially recorded as an unfortunate accident. The Krovax would issue a formal apology within the week. Everything would return to normal. But something had changed in that moment. Something the galaxy would not understand until it was far too late. They had killed a human's dog. They had dismissed it as nothing. They had called it justified. They would learn that some acts, no matter how small they seem, can never be forgiven. And they would learn that humanity had been very, very patient for 20 years. But patience, like all things, has its limits. The war hadn't started yet. But in that moment, as Marcus carried Atlas's body toward the human transport, it became inevitable. 3 weeks had passed since Atlas died. The Krovax had issued their formal apology, exactly as promised. It was a single paragraph transmitted through official channels, expressing regret for the unfortunate incident and hoping it would not damage relations between their species and humanity. Warlord Krasthor faced no punishment, no trial, no consequences of any kind. The galaxy expected anger from Earth. They expected protests, angry speeches, maybe even some minor economic sanctions. What they got instead was silence, then something much worse. Agreement. Commander Sarah Okonkwo now led the human delegation at the council. She had replaced Marcus Chen, who had resigned the day after returning to Earth. Sarah was younger, with a bright smile and an eager attitude that made her seem almost naive. When she arrived at the council station for her first session, many aliens assumed she would continue humanity's complaints about the Atlas incident. Instead, she never mentioned it at all. Earth is pleased to accept the new trade terms, Sarah said during a discussion about tariffs on human agricultural exports. The terms were terrible. They would cost Earth billions. The previous human delegation had been fighting against them for months. The Zethran trade minister tilted his insectoid head in confusion. You accept? Without negotiation? Yes, Sarah's smile never wavered. We understand the council's concerns. Earth is happy to comply. The mining rights in the outer territories were awarded to the Krovax without human opposition. A proposed joint science station that would have featured human researchers was suddenly a project Earth no longer wanted to participate in. Territorial disputes that had dragged on for years were resolved overnight, as humans simply agreed to whatever the other species wanted. They have finally learned their place, Krasthor announced proudly. The humans understand now that they are junior members of this council. They will accept what we allow them to have and be grateful for it. Many council members agreed. The telepathic Quillari were less certain. Elder Quillari diplomat Zeshira had decades of experience reading emotional patterns across different species. Humans were usually easy to read. They felt things strongly and showed it clearly. But now, when Zeshira focused her abilities on the human delegation, she felt something strange. Nothing. Complete calm. Not the calm of peace, but the calm of someone who had already made a decision and was simply waiting for the right moment. It reminded Zeshira of something from human history she had once studied. A phrase they used, the calm before the storm. She tried to share her concerns with other council members, but they dismissed her worries. Humans were behaving properly now. Why look for problems where none existed? But there were problems. Small ones at first, easy to overlook. Human cargo vessels started taking different routes through space. Not drastically different, just a few light years off their usual paths. When questioned, human captains cited cosmic radiation or asteroid field drift, reasonable explanations that no one bothered to verify. Communication blackouts began occurring in human-controlled space sectors. Entire regions would go silent for hours at a time. Human authorities blamed solar flares, equipment malfunctions, scheduled maintenance. Each excuse was plausible. Each incident was minor. Nobody saw the pattern. Military satellites around Earth and her colonies went offline. Routine maintenance, human officials explained. They provided detailed schedules showing when each satellite would return to service. Everything seemed normal. Except the satellites that came back online weren't quite the same as the ones that had gone offline. The changes were subtle. Different energy signatures. Slightly altered orbits. Nothing that would raise alarms unless someone was looking very carefully. Nobody was looking carefully. The few aliens who did notice strange things found themselves blocked at every turn. A Zethran intelligence officer tried to investigate increased human military communications. He filed a formal request to inspect human military facilities, as was his right under council law. The request disappeared into Earth's bureaucracy. Weeks passed with no response. When he filed a complaint, he received an apology and a promise that his request was being processed. More weeks passed. By the time anyone realized the request had been deliberately stalled, the officer had moved on to other assignments. A Luminar merchant captain reported seeing unusual activity near Jupiter's moons. Large vessels moving in and out of what should have been empty space. She filed her report with Council Security. The report was marked as under investigation and filed away. When she followed up, she was told human authorities had explained it was a civilian construction project. Nothing to worry about. The captain was not satisfied, but she had shipments to deliver. She couldn't waste more time on paperwork. On Earth and throughout human colonies, changes were happening at a massive scale, but they were happening behind closed doors in classified facilities, under layers of security that the galaxy had not realized humans possessed. The Luna base, humanity's oldest off-world settlement, had been closed to non-human visitors for structural renovations. This had been going on for 3 months. Council members who asked about it received polite responses about safety regulations and construction timelines. No one pushed harder. Why would they? It was just construction. Beneath the surface of Luna, the construction was indeed massive. Entire sections of the moon had been hollowed out over the past weeks. Thousands of human workers operated in round-the-clock shifts. They built facilities that stretched for miles underground. Hangar bays, command centers, weapons platforms. All of it hidden beneath the gray surface that the galaxy could see. Mars had been undergoing terraforming for 15 years. It was one of humanity's proudest projects, slowly transforming the red planet into a world that could support human life without protective gear. Atmospheric processors worked constantly. Melting ice caps released water. Temperature regulators adjusted the climate degree by degree. Except half of those facilities weren't for terraforming. They were military installations disguised as environmental systems. Fortress walls hidden as canyon formations. Anti-ship batteries camouflaged as mining equipment. Entire divisions of human soldiers trained in valleys that were supposed to be uninhabited research zones. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had always been a site of human mining operations. Thousands of small facilities extracted minerals from the tumbling rocks. Cargo ships moved constantly between the asteroids and the inner planets. Normal activity that had been going on since humans first reached this far into their own solar system. But some of those facilities weren't mining ore. They were building weapons, mines that could tear apart starships, automated defense platforms, missile batteries with yields that would make Council weapons inspectors go pale if they knew about them. And between the asteroids, human engineers had created a network, a web of sensors and weapons that could turn the entire belt into a death trap for any fleet that tried to pass through it. Further out in the cold dark beyond Pluto, something even larger was happening. The Kuiper Belt was considered worthless by most species. Too far from the sun, too cold, too empty. Humanity had claimed it 20 years ago and no one had objected. Why would they want that frozen wasteland? Now, in that frozen wasteland, ships were gathering. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They had been built in secret shipyards scattered across human space. Facilities that existed on no official records. Crewed by personnel who had been quietly removed from census data, funded by black budgets hidden within legitimate government spending. These were not exploration vessels, not cargo haulers, not the simple defensive craft that humanity had shown the Council. These were warships, dreadnoughts large enough to crack planets, carriers stuffed with AI-piloted fighters, destroyers armed with weapons that violated 17 different galactic conventions that humanity had cleverly never signed. The Shadow Armada, humans called it, a fleet that officially did not exist, a military force that the galaxy had no idea humanity possessed. And every day more ships joined it in the dark. Admiral James Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the flagship, a massive dreadnought named Vengeance. Through the viewscreen he could see dozens of other ships holding position around him, and he knew there were thousands more throughout the Kuiper Belt, all waiting. "Any word from Earth?" he asked his communications officer. "Commander Okonkwo reports the Council continues to accept our compliance. They suspect nothing." Rodriguez nodded slowly. On a small screen beside his command chair, a picture was displayed. A golden retriever with kind eyes and a gentle expression. Atlas, the dog whose death had triggered all of this. "How much longer?" Rodriguez asked. "Intelligence estimates 2 more weeks until we're at full readiness. Then we wait for the signal from Earth. 2 more weeks." Rodriguez could be patient for 2 more weeks. Humanity had been patient for 20 years after all. They had joined the Galactic Council with hope and friendship. They had tried to be good neighbors. They had shown the galaxy their best side. The galaxy had killed their dog and called it nothing. Now the galaxy would see humanity's other side. The side that had conquered their own world a dozen times over. The side that had built weapons capable of ending all life on Earth while they still used primitive rockets. The side that knew how to smile and plan murder at the same time. "Maintain stealth protocols," Rodriguez ordered. "Keep the fleet dark. When we reveal ourselves, I want it to be the biggest surprise the galaxy has ever seen." "Yes, sir." Rodriguez looked at Atlas's picture one more time. "They should have just apologized," he said quietly. "Really apologized. Punished Krasthor, shown us that a dog's life mattered. But they didn't." He turned back to the view screen where thousands of invisible warships waited in the dark. "So now they'll learn that it did matter. And they'll learn what happens when you teach humanity that the galaxy only respects force." The calm continued. Sarah Okonkwo kept smiling at council sessions. Human ships kept changing routes. Communication blackouts kept happening. And in the dark beyond Pluto, the Shadow Armada grew larger every day. The galaxy thought the matter was settled. They thought humanity had accepted their place. They were wrong. Humanity had accepted nothing. They were simply preparing. The storm was coming, and the galaxy had no idea how badly it had miscalculated. Elder Zeshra could not sleep. This was unusual for a Kalari. Her species typically enjoyed deep, peaceful rest, their telepathic minds quiet and calm during sleep cycles. But for the past week, something had been bothering her. A feeling she could not shake. A warning her instincts screamed that her logical mind could not yet understand. It was the humans. Something about them was very, very wrong. She sat in her private quarters on the council station, surrounded by data screens. For days now, she had been collecting information, small details that others dismissed, patterns that seemed meaningless on their own but created a disturbing picture when viewed together. She started with Earth's history. The Quillari had studied human culture when they first made contact, of course, but Zeshra realized now that the study had been superficial. They had looked at human art, music, literature. They had examined human philosophy and religion. They had learned about human emotions and social structures. They had not looked deeply enough at human warfare. Zeshra pulled up historical records from Earth's database. What she found made her blood run cold. Humans had been killing each other for their entire recorded history. That was not unusual. Most species went through violent periods before achieving space travel, but the scale of human violence was staggering. Wars that killed millions, weapons designed specifically to cause maximum suffering, entire civilizations wiped out by other civilizations from the same planet. And they had done all of this before they even left their homeworld. Zeshra read about something called World War II. Over 70 million humans dead, cities burned to ash, weapons that could devastate entire regions. And this was using primitive technology, chemical explosives, simple aircraft, basic radio communications. Then she found information about nuclear weapons. Humans had developed bombs that could destroy cities in single blasts. Not just destroy buildings, but make the land uninhabitable for generations. They had created missiles that could carry these bombs across continents in minutes, and they had built thousands of them. The Cold War, humans called it. Two massive human nations pointing enough nuclear weapons at each other to end all life on Earth, multiple times over. They had lived like this for decades, smiling at each other in diplomatic meetings while their fingers hovered over buttons that could trigger global extinction. And they had done this while they were barely reaching their own. Zeshra felt a chill run through her. Telepathic senses. What kind of species develops world-ending weapons before achieving stable space travel? What kind of species threatens its own extinction as a negotiation tactic? She dug deeper. She found references to biological weapons, diseases engineered to kill, chemicals designed to destroy crops and starve populations, machines built solely for murder, refined over thousands of years of constant warfare. But it was what happened after humans joined the Galactic Council that truly frightened her. Zeshra found a reference in a heavily encrypted human military file. She should not have been able to access it, but her position on the council gave her certain privileges. The file was labeled simply, "The Contingency." It took her hours to break through the security. When she finally accessed the contents, she wished she hadn't. The Contingency was a human military protocol developed immediately after first contact with alien species. It was a simple plan with a terrifying premise. What if the aliens are hostile? What if first contact leads to war? What should humanity do? The answer was clear. Build weapons. Build them in secret. Build them constantly. Never stop building them. Smile and trade and make friends, yes, but always, always be ready for war. When humanity joined the Galactic Council, they had agreed to disarm. They had signed treaties limiting military expansion. They had promised to be peaceful members of the galactic community. The Council had believed them. The Council had been fools. Humans had not disarmed. They had hidden their weapons. Every treaty they signed had loopholes. Every inspection they allowed was carefully staged. For 20 years, while playing the role of naive newcomers, humanity had been preparing for war. Zeshra found evidence of secret shipyards, facilities built in regions of space that humans claimed were being surveyed for colonization, military production disguised as civilian industry, weapon development masked as scientific research. She found personnel records that didn't match, census data with gaps, entire populations of human colonies that existed in official records but could not be accounted for in civilian registries. Where had those people gone? Into the military, into black projects, into preparations for a war that everyone thought would never come. The more Zeshra investigated, the more horrified she became. Humanity had not just been building weapons. They had been studying the Council, learning weaknesses, identifying strategic targets, planning invasions of every major Council world. She found simulations, war games where human strategists practiced conquering Krovak's fortress worlds, training scenarios where human soldiers learned to fight in Quillary telepathic networks, research projects focused on finding vulnerabilities in Zethran hive communications. Humanity had been preparing to fight everyone, just in case. Zeshra pulled up recent data on human ship movements, the strange routes, the communication blackouts, the satellite maintenance. Suddenly it all made sense. They were mobilizing, secretly moving assets into position, preparing for something big, but preparing for what? And when? She accessed Council records on the Atlas incident, the formal apology from the Krovaks, the official closure of the case. Everything had seemed properly resolved according to galactic law. Then she read human cultural files about companion animals. Dogs, they called them. Species that humans had lived alongside for over 30,000 years. Not just pets, not just animals, family members, children, friends, beings that humans loved with an intensity that Zeshra's telepathic senses could barely comprehend. She found human literature about dogs, stories of dogs who saved human lives, dogs who waited years for dead owners to return, dogs who refused to leave injured humans even in the face of danger. The bond between humans and dogs was something primal, something fundamental to human psychology, and the Council had dismissed the death of one as nothing important. Zeshra stood up suddenly, her body trembling. She understood now. The pieces fit together into a picture that terrified her. Humanity had spent 20 years preparing for the possibility of war. They had hoped it would never come. They had tried to be peaceful. They had genuinely wanted to be friends with the galaxy. Then the galaxy had killed their dog, and dismissed it, and told them to accept it. Humanity was not going to accept it. Zeshra immediately sent an emergency message to the Council leadership. She compiled all her evidence, the historical data on human warfare, the references to the contingency, the evidence of secret military buildup, the cultural importance of companion animals, everything. The response came back within hours. Council security had reviewed her report. They found her evidence circumstantial and speculative. Yes, humans had a violent history, but so did many species. Yes, there were some irregularities in human activities, but nothing that clearly violated Council law. Yes, the Atlas incident was unfortunate, but it had been properly resolved. Zeshra was advised to stop wasting Council resources on conspiracy theories. She tried to contact other Quillari diplomats. Surely they would understand the telepathic warning she felt, but even her own people dismissed her concerns. Humans were behaving properly now. They were cooperating. They had accepted their place in the galactic order. Zeshra felt like she was screaming into a void. She could see the danger approaching. She could feel it in every telepathic sense she possessed, but no one would listen. Then, 6 days after her warning was dismissed, something changed. The human delegation requested a special session of the Galactic Council. Full attendance required. Maximum priority. They had an important announcement to make. Zeshra felt a wave of cold terror wash over her telepathic senses. This was it. Whatever humanity had been planning, it was about to be revealed. She tried one last time to warn the Council. She sent urgent messages to every major delegate. She begged them to take precautions, to at least consider the possibility that humanity might be dangerous. Most ignored her. A few sent polite replies suggesting she take some time off for rest and recovery. The stress of her position was clearly affecting her judgment. Krasthor sent a different kind of message. The Quillari grow paranoid in their old age. The humans know their place now. They will probably ask for forgiveness for their previous presumption. This session will be them formally accepting junior status in the Council. Other Krovaks agreed. Many Council members shared this view. The humans were going to apologize. They were going to formally acknowledge that they had overstepped. They would accept whatever role the Council gave them, and be grateful for it. Zeshra knew better. She had studied human history. She had seen the evidence of their preparations. She understood what they were capable of. Humans did not apologize when they felt wronged. They did not accept injustice quietly. They smiled and planned and waited for the right moment. Then they struck with overwhelming force. The special session was scheduled for 3 days from now. Zeshra spent those days trying to prepare. She quietly moved her personal belongings off the station. She arranged for Quillari civilians to leave council space, citing various excuses. She did everything she could to protect her people. On the morning of the special session, Zeshra entered the council chamber with a sense of dread she had never felt before. The chamber was full. Every major species had sent representatives. Even minor council members who rarely attended had shown up, curious about what the humans wanted to announce. Krasthor sat in the Krovax section, looking smug and satisfied. He expected an apology. He expected humanity to grovel. The human delegation entered. Commander Sarah Okonkwo walked at their head, but she was not alone. Behind her came someone Zeshira recognized from records, Marcus Chen, the former ambassador who had resigned after Atlas died. He was wearing a military uniform now, with the rank insignia of an admiral. That's when Zeshira knew for certain. This was not an apology. This was a declaration. Sarah Okonkwo stood at the central podium. She still wore that bright smile, but now Zeshira could see what it really was. Not friendliness, not cooperation. It was the smile of someone who had already won and was just waiting for everyone else to realize it. Honored council members, Sarah began, her voice clear and steady. Earth has an announcement to make. We thought it was time to show you who we really are. Behind her, Marcus Chen activated a holographic display. It showed the Sol system, Earth, Luna, Mars, the asteroid belt, and beyond it, in the cold darkness of the Kuiper belt, thousands of red dots appeared. Each dot was a warship. The council chamber fell silent as the scale of what they were seeing became clear. Zeshira heard gasps from dozens of different species, saw the shock spreading across alien faces. Sarah's smile widened. We call it the Shadow Armada. We built it just in case we ever needed it. We really hoped we wouldn't. She turned to look directly at Krasthor. But then you killed our dog. The holographic display expanded, filling the center of the council chamber with light. The thousands of red dots in the Kuiper belt pulsed like angry stars. Each one represented a human warship that had been hidden from the galaxy for years. Ships that should not exist. Weapons that violated treaties humanity had cleverly never agreed to follow. Marcus Chen stepped forward beside Sarah Okonkwo. His face was calm, but his eyes held something that made even the warrior Krovax shift uncomfortably. It was not anger. Anger burned hot and faded. This was something colder. Something that had been nursed and refined over weeks of careful planning. For 20 years, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems, Earth has been a member of this council. We came in peace. We brought our best technology to share. We offered our culture, our friendship, our hope for a better galaxy. The hologram changed. Now it showed Earth's moon, Luna. The gray surface split apart like opening doors. Beneath it, massive structures were revealed. Hangar bays that stretched for miles. Weapon platforms that bristled with armaments. The entire moon had been hollowed out and converted into a fortress. We also brought our caution, Marcus continued, because humanity learned long ago that peace is only possible when you are prepared for war. So we built in secret, just in case. A Zethran council member stood up, his insectoid body trembling. This is a violation of council law. You agreed to limit military expansion. Sarah's smile never wavered. Please show me the treaty where we agreed to that. You'll find that Earth signed agreements to limit offensive operations, to participate in mutual defense pacts, to share certain technologies. We never agreed to disarm. You simply assumed we would. The hologram shifted again. Mars appeared. The red planet humanity had been terraforming for 15 years, but now the image changed to show what was really there. Atmospheric processors that were actually weapon batteries, research stations that were actually military command centers. The entire terraforming project had been a cover for building a fortress world. Mars base, Marcus said. Population, 40 million civilians. Also population, 20 million soldiers. With enough firepower to hold off an invasion fleet for years, maybe forever. Krasthor stood up, his armored form towering in the Krovax section. You dare threaten the council? You are one species against thousands. This is madness. Marcus turned to look at the Krovax warlord. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he spoke, and his voice was soft, quiet, more terrifying than any shout. "You killed my dog." The chamber fell silent. "You killed Atlas," Marcus continued, "and you called it self-defense. The council accepted your excuse, gave you a formal apology that meant nothing, asked us to move on, to forget, to accept that a life we cherished was worth nothing in galactic law." The hologram changed again. Now it showed the asteroid belt, thousands of installations scattered among the tumbling rocks. As the council watched, the installations activated. Weapons platforms emerged from hollowed-out asteroids. Missile batteries locked onto projected targets. Defense grids lit up in a web of interlocking fire zones. "The asteroid belt," Sarah said cheerfully, as if she were describing a pleasant vacation spot. "We've turned it into the largest minefield in known space. Any fleet trying to enter the Sol system would have to pass through it. We estimate a 98% casualty rate for any invasion force." "This is insane," a Luminar delegate floated forward, his jellyfish-like body pulsing with agitation. "You cannot possibly believe you can fight the entire galaxy." "We don't want to fight the entire galaxy," Marcus replied. "We wanted to be friends with the galaxy. We tried that for 20 years. But the galaxy taught us a lesson. The galaxy showed us that it doesn't respect peaceful species. It only respects strength." The hologram zoomed out now, showing the entire Sol system. And beyond it, in the darkness past Pluto, those thousands of red dots began to move. The Shadow Armada was coming online. 3,000 warships, Marcus said, built over 20 years in facilities that officially don't exist. Crewed by personnel who were quietly removed from civilian records. Every single one of them volunteers who understood what we were preparing for. Sarah touched a control. The hologram changed to show technical specifications. Ship designs that made the Council's military experts lean forward in shock. Dreadnoughts 3 times the size of standard battleships. Carriers that could deploy thousands of AI-piloted fighters. Destroyers equipped with weapons that the galaxy had banned centuries ago. Humanity never signed the Plasma Regulation Treaty, Sarah noted, or the Kinetic Bombardment Convention, or the AI Combat Systems ban. You see, when we joined the Council, our legal experts were very careful about which treaties we actually agreed to follow. A Quillari delegate, not Zeshira but one of her colleagues, spoke up. "How did we not detect this?" "Our intelligence services should have found evidence." "They did," Marcus said, "multiple times. But every investigation was blocked. Every inquiry was buried in bureaucracy. Every suspicious report was explained away with reasonable excuses. Because you wanted to believe we were harmless. You wanted to believe we had accepted our place. The hologram showed Earth now, the homeworld of humanity. The planet looked peaceful from space. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. Then the image changed to show what was really there. Orbital defense platforms by the hundreds. Ground-based weapons that could fire into space. Manufacturing facilities producing war materials at a staggering rate. Earth has been at war for most of its history, Marcus said. We know how to build weapons. We're very, very good at it. We just hoped we'd never need to use that skill against our galactic neighbors. Krasthor's anger finally broke through his shock. You think your primitive weapons frighten the Krovax? We have conquered 100 worlds. Our empire spans 10 systems. You are nothing. Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Then you won't mind a demonstration. Sarah nodded to another human officer. The man typed commands into a portable console. The hologram changed one more time. Now it showed Krovax space. Specifically, it showed Krovax Prime, the Krovax homeworld, and around that world, previously invisible, a dozen red dots appeared. We have ships in your home system, Marcus said calmly. Right now. They've been there for 3 weeks. Your defenses never detected them. They could have fired on your homeworld at any time. Krasthor's face went through several colors. Rage, shock, fear. Other Krovax delegates were frantically checking their own communications, trying to verify what the humans claimed. This is impossible, Krasthor growled, but his voice wavered. It's stealth technology we developed 50 years ago, Sarah explained, long before we joined the Council. We've just been waiting for the right moment to reveal it. Another human officer spoke into a communicator. A moment later, confirmation came from Krovax space. Their defense systems had just detected 12 human warships in orbit around Krovax Prime. Ships that had been there, invisible and silent, for weeks. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates from every species began shouting. Some demanded explanations. Others called for immediate military action. A few began quietly calculating what this meant for their own defensive positions. Marcus waited for the noise to die down. When it didn't, Sarah touched another control. A pulse of sound filled the chamber, not loud but commanding. Silence fell. "We don't want war," Marcus said again. "We never wanted war. But you need to understand something about humanity. We are loyal. Incredibly loyal. To our families. To our friends. To our companions. When you harm what we love, we do not forget. We do not forgive. We prepare." The hologram now showed a simple image. A golden retriever. Atlas. His kind eyes looked out at the assembled council. "This was Atlas," Marcus said softly. "He was a therapy dog. His job was to help me deal with stress and anxiety. He was gentle. He never hurt anyone in his entire life. He approached Warlord Krasthor offering only friendship." Marcus turned to face Krasthor directly. "And you killed him. Because you were annoyed with me. Because you wanted to prove humans were beneath you. Because you could. It was just an animal," Krasthor said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Just an animal," Marcus repeated. "You see, that's the problem. You don't understand. In human culture, dogs are family. Atlas wasn't just an animal. He was my friend, my companion, someone I loved, and you murdered him." Sarah stepped forward. "Earth is now issuing formal demands to the Galactic Council. First, Warlord Krasthor will be handed over to human authorities to face trial for the murder of Atlas. Second, the Council will formally recognize that companion animals are protected entities under galactic law. Third, all treaties and agreements will be renegotiated to respect Earth's actual military capacity." "And if we refuse?" a brave delegate asked. Marcus's smile returned. "Then we demonstrate what the Shadow Armada can actually do. We don't want to. Every human death in this chamber hoped we would never reach this point. But we're prepared. We've been preparing for 20 years. The hologram changed one final time. It showed projections, battle scenarios, human forces against council fleets. The simulations ran quickly, showing engagement after engagement. In every single one, human forces won. Not narrowly, decisively, overwhelmingly. "You have technological superiority in some areas," Sarah admitted. "Your energy shields are better than ours. Your faster-than-light drives are more efficient. But we have something you don't. We have experience. Real, brutal survival-level experience with warfare. And we have weapons you can't imagine because you've been peaceful for too long." Marcus looked around the chamber at all the shocked alien faces. "You can accept our terms. You can give us justice for Atlas. You can recognize that humanity is not weak, not junior, not beneath you. Or you can fight, and you will lose." He let that sink in for a moment. Then he added almost as an afterthought, "The Shadow Armada is not our only preparation. It's just the one we're showing you today. Think carefully before you refuse." Silence filled the chamber. Every delegate was processing what they had just learned. Humanity, the species they had dismissed as naive newcomers, had been hiding an entire military infrastructure. They had been preparing for war while smiling and trading and pretending to be harmless. Krasthor stood frozen, his earlier arrogance completely gone. The warrior who had killed Atlas without a second thought now faced the consequences of that action. An entire species had mobilized for war because of what he had done. Because he had killed their dog. And in that moment, the entire galaxy began to understand something fundamental about humanity. They were dangerous not in spite of their capacity for love, but because of it. They would go to unimaginable lengths to protect what they cared about. They would prepare for decades. They would hide weapons across star systems. They would smile and wait and plan. And they would never ever forgive those who hurt their dogs. The council chamber remained silent for nearly a full minute after Marcus finished speaking. It was the kind of silence that comes when everyone is trying to process something too large to immediately understand. Finally, Elder Zeshra stood up. Her telepathic senses had been screaming warnings for weeks, and now everyone could see she had been right. "The Quillari accept humanity's terms," she said simply. "We should have listened when they first asked for justice. We should have punished the one who killed their companion. We failed. We accept responsibility for that failure." Several other species quickly added their agreement. The Luminar, the Zethran, Smaller council members who had no desire to test humanity's weapons, but others remained silent, waiting to see what the Krovax would do. Krasthor stood like a statue, his armored body rigid. Around him, other Krovax warriors shifted uncomfortably. They were a proud species, a warrior culture that had never backed down from a challenge. To surrender now to hand over their warlord for trial would be humiliating, but they also were not fools. The Krovax do not accept threats, Krasthor said finally. His voice was steady, but those who knew his species could hear the uncertainty beneath it. If humanity wants war, we will give them war. We have fleets that have conquered systems. We have weapons that we've already accounted for, Sarah interrupted pleasantly. We've studied every battle the Krovax have ever fought. We know your tactics, your weapons, your fleet compositions. We've run simulations for years. Would you like to see them? The hologram changed. It showed a Krovax battle fleet facing human ships. The simulation ran at high speed. Within minutes, the Krovax fleet was debris. That's your third fleet, Sarah noted. Want to see what happens to your second fleet? Or your first? We have simulations for all of them. A younger Krovax warrior, one of Krasthor's subordinates, stepped forward. Warlord, perhaps we should consider silence. Krasthor roared, but even his own people were looking at him differently now. With doubt, with fear, the absolute confidence of Krovax superiority was cracking. Let me make something clear, Marcus said. His voice was calm but carried absolute certainty. We don't want to destroy the Krovax. We don't want to destroy anyone. We just want justice. Give us Krasthor. Accept that companion animals are protected. Treat humanity as equals. That's all. And if we refuse? Krasthor demanded. Marcus looked at him with something like pity. Then we give you 3 hours to evacuate Krovax Prime. After that, the ships we have in your system will demonstrate what humanity does to those who murder our family and refuse to face consequences. The threat hung in the air. Every species in the chamber understood what it meant. Humanity was willing to destroy the Krovax homeworld, not as a first strike, not as an act of conquest, but as punishment. As a lesson to the galaxy about what happens when you hurt what humans love. Krasthor's hands clenched into fists. For a moment it looked like he might call humanity's bluff. Then one of his own advisors whispered something urgent. The warlord's face changed. He had just received confirmation that yes, there really were human ships in Krovax space. Ships that had been there for weeks without being detected. Ships that could fire at any moment. The Krovax, Krasthor said slowly, each word clearly causing him pain, will consider humanity's demands. You have 1 hour to decide, Marcus said. After that, we start showing the galaxy what the Shadow Armada can really do. The council session ended in chaos. Delegates rushed to contact their homeworlds. Military commanders tried to assess their defensive positions. Everyone suddenly realized that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight. Humanity, the species that had seemed so weak and naive, was actually the most dangerous military force the council had ever faced. And they had been hiding it for 20 years. Krasthor retreated to private chambers with his advisors. The debate was fierce. Many Krovax wanted to fight. Their honor demanded it. But their military analysts showed them the simulations, showed them the human weapons, showed them what would happen if they went to war. The Krovax would lose. Badly. 37 minutes after the council session ended, Krasthor emerged. He looked like he had aged years in less than an hour. In a formal transmission to the council and to Earth, he made his announcement. The Krovax accept humanity's terms. Warlord Krasthor will submit to human justice for the killing of the creature called Atlas. We acknowledge that we underestimated humanity's attachment to such beings. This will not happen again. It was not a full apology. It was barely an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. But it was surrender. The mighty Krovax had backed down without a shot being fired. Marcus Chen received the message while standing on the bridge of the Vengeance, the flagship of the Shadow Armada. Around him, officers who had been preparing for potential combat stood down. Some looked relieved. Others looked almost disappointed that they would not get to test their weapons against a real enemy. Stand down from combat alert, Marcus ordered. Maintain defensive positions but do not advance. The Krovax have agreed to our terms. Within hours, Krasthor was on a transport ship heading to Earth. He would face trial in human courts for the murder of Atlas. The sentence had already been decided through diplomatic channels. 20 years of community service at Earth animal shelters. He would spend 2 decades learning to care for the creatures he had considered beneath notice, learning why they mattered, learning what he had really done when he killed Atlas. For a warrior who had conquered planets, it was perhaps a worse punishment than death. But it was justice, human justice, and the galaxy would see it carried out. The Galactic Council reconvened 3 days later. This time the atmosphere was completely different. Human delegates no longer sat in the junior member section. They had been moved to a primary position, alongside the Quillari and other senior species. No one objected. Treaties were rewritten. The agreements that humanity had signed 20 years ago were torn up and replaced with new ones. Ones that acknowledged Earth's true military capacity. Ones that gave humanity equal voice in council decisions. Ones that included protections for companion animals across all species. Several other species, watching how humans had responded to Atlas's death, began adopting companion animals of their own. The Zethrans started breeding small creatures they called hive friends. The Luminar developed bonds with aquatic species. Even some Krovax, after watching Krasthor's trial and seeing the relationship between humans and dogs, cautiously began their own programs. The galaxy was learning, slowly, painfully, but learning. Sarah Okonkwo remained as Earth's primary ambassador, but now when she smiled, everyone knew what it meant. It meant humanity was being friendly, but it also meant humanity was watching, calculating, ready. The Shadow Armada did not disappear. Earth had revealed its existence, and now it patrolled human borders openly. Massive dreadnoughts moved through space alongside civilian vessels. Carriers conducted training exercises that the whole galaxy could see. The message was clear. Humanity had been strong all along, and now everyone knew it. Marcus Chen retired from active diplomacy. He had achieved what he set out to do. Justice for Atlas, recognition for humanity, a new place in the galactic order. He returned to Earth, to a small house near the ocean, and got another dog. A puppy this time from the same breeder who had provided Atlas. He named her Hope. On Luna Base, in the primary hangar of the Vengeance, the humans built a memorial. It was a simple statue of a golden retriever, captured in bronze, sitting with his head held high and his eyes kind. The plaque beneath it read, "Atlas, the dog who changed the galaxy. He came in peace. He offered only friendship. His death taught the stars that humanity's love is matched only by humanity's fury. May we never forget what we are capable of, both in devotion and in war." Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the memorial. They stood before it in silence, contemplating the strange species called humanity, a species that could hide weapons capable of destroying worlds, a species that could smile while preparing for total war, a species that would mobilize entire armadas over the death of one small creature. The galaxy had learned many lessons from humanity. They learned about stealth technology and military planning. They learned about long-term strategic thinking and patient preparation. They learned about weapons and tactics and the art of war. But the most important lesson was simpler than any of that. They learned that you don't kill a human's dog. Not because of the dog itself, though humanity loved their companions deeply, but because of what it represented. When you killed a dog, you showed humanity that you did not value what they valued, that you did not respect what they loved, that you considered their bonds meaningless, and humanity had spent their entire history fighting for what they loved. Their families, their homes, their friends, their dogs. The galaxy had thought humanity was weak because they valued such things. They had thought emotion was a weakness. They had thought love made you vulnerable. They were wrong. Love did not make humanity weak. Love made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy, because there was nothing a human would not do to protect what they loved. No weapon they would not build. No war they would not fight. No sacrifice they would not make. The Krovax had learned this lesson the hard way. They had killed Atlas thinking it meant nothing, thinking humans would accept it and move on. Instead, they had triggered a response that shook the entire galactic order. Years later, in the revised Council history books, scholars would debate what the Shadow Armada reveal really meant. Some called it humanity's coming-of-age moment, the point where they stopped being naive newcomers and became a true galactic power. Others called it a warning, a demonstration of what humanity was really capable of when pushed. But everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy was different now. Humanity had changed it, not through conquest or aggression, but through a simple message delivered with overwhelming force. We came to you in peace. We brought our best selves, our loyalty, our companionship, our hope for friendship. You killed that. You taught us that the galaxy only respects strength. Lesson learned. And in that learning, the galaxy became a place where companion animals were protected, where bonds of friendship mattered, where even the smallest life could have meaning. Because if you harmed such a life, you would answer to humanity. And humanity, as the galaxy now knew, had been preparing for that possibility all along. The age of human weakness was over. Not because humanity had revealed weapons, but because they had revealed themselves. Their true nature. Their capacity for both profound love and absolute ruthlessness. The galaxy had wanted to see human strength. So humanity had shown them. And nothing would ever be the same.